Good afternoon and happy Sunday. I'm meteorologist Chris Ramirez with your weather update. We are issuing a weather impact alert starting at 6 p.m. tonight and lasting through 12 p.m. on Monday. And this is all thanks to a cold front, a very strong cold front that is going to be moving through the Houston area later on today. So the impacts do include some storms, but the main impacts are going to be the 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts and that 40-degree temperature drop as we head into the overnight hours. So if you are out and about today, we're going to start seeing those wind speeds pick up here shortly, and they're going to be out of the south, but it's going to be overnight is when we're going to start seeing the full impacts of this cold front. So you want to secure those loose objects and maybe just even have a jacket or a scarf ready for tomorrow morning as temperatures are going to significantly drop. So current temps right now, we are looking at this front moving through the panhandle. Take a look at those temperature differences. Right now it's 80 degrees in Abilene, 56 degrees in Lubbock. There was some reports of 70-mile-an-hour winds with this front and with the winds that are currently in the panhandle, creating some very dusty conditions, dust storm conditions, as well as low visibility for portions of the panhandle. And that front is going to be moving south fairly quickly here in the next several hours, and we are expected to see some of those impacts here across the state as it sweeps through the Lone Star State. So these are a look at the temperatures heading into Monday morning. We're going to be in the 40s and 30s across the Lone Star State, getting down to about 42 degrees or maybe even 43 degrees for the Houston area, and then temps are going to struggle to make it out of the 50s as we head into tomorrow afternoon. And so 85, our high temperature for today, followed by a pretty chilly morning heading into the early hours of Monday. So as we look at our future track, this is what we're looking at in terms of the storm chances. We are expecting a very thin line of storms that are going to be moving through the Houston area between the hours of 6 o'clock and 7 p.m. So once that front moves into Houston, it's going to bring those storms from Houston area south. These are going to be very brief storms, not long lasting. They're going to quickly be out of the picture before you know it, especially as we get closer towards the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock hours. By 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we will see them approach the Galveston area, and they're going to be out of the picture. But the main threats with some of these storms do include the risk for some isolated severe weather for Houston. So we could see maybe some isolated strong storms in the Houston area where you see the areas highlighted in green. That includes Huntsville, Angleton, El Campo, Columbus. That's a marginal risk. That's a 1 out of 5 risk. And then areas out towards the northeast. This includes Liberty, Livingston. That's a slight risk. That's a 2 out of 5. And so more of that stronger storm activity is possible for areas north and east of Houston as this cold front moves through. And so as we look at the winds are going to be gusting out of the south between maybe 20-25 miles an hour for this afternoon. But it's after this front arrives where we'll start seeing those gusts up to 35, close to 40 miles an hour as we head into the early hours of Monday. I'm going to go ahead and show you what we're looking at for the early hours of Monday, which is what we're seeing. It's around maybe 30 miles an hour in Houston, up to 45 miles an hour out in the Galveston area. And so behind this front is going to be some very dry air in place, and that is going to really create a fire weather concern for everybody across southeast Texas. So we have the dry vegetation, all thanks to the increasing drought conditions. And so when you combine the high winds, the dry conditions that are in place, that's going to create a fire weather concern. But even though it's going to be a bit warm and muggy for this afternoon, we will see those temps drop into the low 40s and 30s for areas north of Houston, and then struggle to make it out of the 50s as we head into Monday afternoon. So a wind advisory in effect for all of southeast Texas from until 6 p.m. on Monday, which we could see some 40 to 45 mile an hour wind gusts. It's looking more likely that we're going to see more of the stronger winds into the early hours of Monday. But also currently right now, there is a fire weather watch. It is very well likely here that the National Weather Service will be upgrading us to a red flag warning, which is a fire weather warning, which is basically an upgrade from watch to warning when it comes to the fire weather concerns. And that's all thanks to the high winds and the very dry conditions. And it's the reason why we're extending that weather impact alert until 12 p.m. on Monday. And so looking at the next 7 days, we are expecting to start off a bit chilly across the area, especially as those winds pick up for Monday morning. And then St. Patrick's Day, we're going to be quickly warming back up into the 70s and 80s through the middle of the week. But we are expecting to see a pretty drastic change in our weather conditions here from this evening and into Monday morning. and that's why we've issued that weather impact alert. So if you're just now joining me on KHOU 11 Plus, we are talking about what the weather impacts are for the next 24 hours here across the Houston area. The KHOU 11 weather team has issued a weather impact alert starting at 6 p.m. on Sunday, lasting through 12 p.m. Monday, as the impacts do include 40-mile-an-hour winds in some locations, more likely along the coastal areas, but we could see them between 35-40 miles an hour for our inland areas, and then with that 40-degree temperature drop. So again, you want to secure those loose objects and definitely be on the lookout for some very strong winds in the overnight hours. And so right now, as we look at the temps, we're about 76 degrees here in Houston, but taking a look at what's happening across the state, you're able to see those temps dropping into the 40s in Amarillo and Lubbock, and there has been some reports of some dust storm activity happening in the Panhandle and some possible 70-mile-an-hour winds out in the Panhandle. We're not going to see winds that strong here in the Houston area, but this is just kind of showing you how strong this cold front is going to be. And like I said before, the main concern is going to be the high winds and the sharp temp drop that we are expecting to see in the morning hours. So that front moving on through, bringing back a dose of winter weather for Texas as we head into the next 12 to 24 hours. So definitely you might want to have those jackets on standby because highs are going to struggle to make it out of the 50s for tomorrow afternoon. And so definitely expecting a pretty significant change, especially as we go into Monday morning. So future track one more time, showing you the future track. I know we think of cold front and we think of possible strong storms or widespread storms, but for this cold front, we're expecting that storm activity to be very thin line of storms that are going to be moving through the Houston area between the hours of 6 o'clock and 7 p.m. and then eventually approaching the coastal areas closer to 8 p.m. And so just keep an eye that these storms are not going to be long lasting. They're going to be very brief. They could be maybe isolated to strong isolated storms in some locations, but just keep an eye on that rain chance and just have an umbrella with you if you're heading out to the rodeo later on this evening, because we are expecting it to briefly rain in some locations or storm in some locations as we head into the evening. I want to go ahead and address another situation that we've been seeing on social media. There has been some posts regarding the possibility of a derecho happening across southeast Texas. That's not the case for this storm, and that is not the case for this here across the Houston area. Our layer of storms is going to be very thin to slim, and we're going to be under only a marginal risk for that severe weather, which is basically saying that we could see an isolated strong storm here across the Houston area. More of the stronger storm risk is going to be out towards Livingston and Liberty, maybe Beaumont, or in areas out towards the east of us, especially out towards Louisiana and portions of the deep south. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out here to see what we're showing. This is for later on in the overnight hours into Sunday. That does include Mississippi and Alabama. So more of that high severe risk is not including us, but just keep in mind that we are not going to be under the gun for any type of derecho type weather. That may not be the case for areas east of Texas and areas for portions of the eastern coast, but that's pretty too soon to say right now if that's going to be happening in that region. But for us here across Houston, I know I saw a Reddit post talking about a derecho, and that is not going to be the situation for us here across the Houston area for later on this evening. So right now conditions are pretty breezy. We're seeing those south winds between 20 and 24 miles an hour here across the Houston area, but current temps right now are in the upper 70s, and we just hit 80 degrees out in Sugar Land. So definitely expecting the window of storm activity between the hours of maybe 6 o'clock through 8 p.m. And like I said before, that's just going to be the slight window of storm activity, and it's going to be very fast moving isolated storms that are going to be in the picture and moving through fairly quickly, and we could see some high winds with it, but just keep an eye on the fact that the winds will significantly increase once this cold front does sweep on through in the overnight hours. So definitely expecting a little bit of a change in our weather situation here in the next 12 to 24 hours, but just going to show you again that future track for this evening. If you are heading out to the rodeo later on tonight, we do have a chance for a brief maybe period of heavy rain moving through. It's going to be very fast moving. It's not going to be a complete washout. That's going to be hugging the coast by 8 o'clock to 9 p.m. and then eventually out of the picture and not really causing too much more concerns in the overnight hours. But it's the high winds and the dry conditions that are going to be in place behind this cold front as we head into the overnight hours that are going to be the primary concerns with this cold front. Winds in excess of 35, close to 40 miles an hour expected here across southeast Texas. So definitely just keep an eye on the fact that you might want to just secure those loose objects. And I think it goes up to maybe when it comes to 40-mile-an-hour winds, when you start seeing that wind speed, that could cause some power flashes and some possible power outages if the wind speed does approach that 40-mile-an-hour range. But for the most part, we are going to be mostly quiet through the overnight in terms of the rain and storm chance. It's just the sharp temperature drop is what we're expecting in the overnight hours going into Monday morning, is when those temps are going to fall into the low 40s in some locations. We might even see some temperatures in the 30s in some locations. I think this model is maybe under a little bit lower than what we are expecting to see, but we're expecting some quite significant changes here pretty shortly as we head into the overnight hours, as well as with the arrival of this strong cold front that is already bringing some pretty high winds out in the Texas Panhandle, and which is the reason why we've issued that hourly weather impact alert starting at 6 p.m. tonight and lasting through 12 p.m. on Monday, because we're also having to keep an eye on the fire weather risk that is going to be associated with the dry air in place. And so as we look at our fire danger risk for Monday, the National Weather Service has us under a watch right now. It's very well likely that this is going to be upgraded into a warning as we head into tomorrow. But this is the fire danger risk from the Texas A&M Forest Service, where you see the red colors, which includes Houston, portions of Harris County and Montgomery counties. That's an extreme risk for wildfire or fire concerns. So you want to avoid that outdoor burning for tomorrow, as we're going to see some pretty elevated fire danger hazards here across the Houston area for our Monday morning once these wind speeds ramp up and once the dry conditions start moving on in. So incoming strong cold front coming through later on this evening. We're not going to really feel the full impacts of it until Monday morning is when we're going to see those temperatures drop, but we will see maybe a storm or two later on this evening. And so just have an umbrella or a rain jacket and be prepared for that storm activity that's only going to be very brief, not long lasting later this evening. And so we are expecting that to arrive between the hours of 7 p.m., maybe even 8 p.m. here across the Houston area. So after this front arrives, much colder weather expected for Monday and into Tuesday, especially for St. Patrick's Day. We're going to continue to see those morning temperatures in the 40s. So if you're heading back to work or school this week, you're going to have a pretty chilly outlook for the start your week, as well as those temperatures warming back up into the 80s. We're going to be warm and humid back before you know it, but this is the only change that we're expecting to see here in the next 12 to 24 hours. And as always, you can find the latest weather updates on KHOU.com and on the KHOU 11 app. We will give you any updates we see fit later on this evening. Make sure to tune in later on today to see meteorologist Kim Castro, who is going to give you the latest updates on what's happening here across the Houston area. Have a great and safe rest of your day.